Hi there and welcome to another episode here on Bustthenet. Yes, this is a show I like to call Game Changer. It's a chance for me to get into one of your saves and, we do things on your save. There are all kinds of saves that I get. And this time I've gotten a really special one from one of our patrons. His name is Tim. He's managing a club called Newton in the Welsh Premier League. And for the first time ever, we get something that's very akin to a youth development save. And he's been in charge of the club for 3 seasons. And during those 3 seasons, the club has done pretty well. I mean, for a youth challenge, essentially he's just using youth players. And he's trying to build this club through, and he's shared this save with me. In the first season, I finished 10th. Expected to go down 10th. Not bad. And then the second season, 5th. Fantastic results here from Tim and his team. In the Welsh Premier League this season, they are expected to finish 3rd, 6-1. So honestly speaking, if I'm looking at this team, I'm thinking to myself, well, why not? This season you should try and get promoted. But in order for us to put ourselves in a position to understand whether we are capable of doing that, is a very good idea to start out with a team report. The team report generally summarizes everything for you into a pros and a cons list, and it's a pretty good screen. There's a lot of information here, and it's up to you to drill through it. The things I look for are going to be things like work rate, whether the team has got enough depth, whether or not you have a presence in defensive midfield. These are things that you want, because if you're a club punching above your weight, you definitely need a defensive midfield. You need players who can do the job of chopping players down. And then you're going to have to look at options going forward in attack. You're looking for creativity. You're also looking for pace and acceleration. Why are you looking for acceleration? When you're punching above your weight, you're not going to get a lot of chances. Some of the time you're going to be sitting back and hitting teams on a counter. So you definitely need players who can bring the ball forward quickly and then hit them on the break. And this means that you're going to have to be able to switch between shapes. Now, this is something that I do a lot for my challenges. I mean, some of my saves rather, they don't get aired. These are personal saves where I do stuff like this, but I keep a lot. I mean, those are much harder challenges, and I can lose quite a lot of games there. But there I have a very simple philosophy. How do I look at shape? Now, I've said it before, transitions, you're looking at making quick transitions, but transitions alone don't just come from shape. Structure helps with transitions, but your transitions come from duties. The number of duties you have going forward are the ones that are going to kick your transitions into gear. So if you assume you have a lot of support duties and you play on fluid, then your transitions are just going to be a bit slow, because your team is moving forward slowly. But then you got to look at mentality, because mentality defines how you're going to play risk. I mean, how your team's going to take chances moving the ball forward. So you're going to have to look at a lot of things when you're looking at your transitions. You got to look at mentality. You got to definitely look at roles and duties, because the right roles and duties need to be attacking the spaces that you want. And then you've got to look at passing instructions. You got to look at where your roles are placed, and these are things that you have to give a lot of thought to when you are looking at creating a system. And especially here with a challenging save, you want to make sure that you have your options. So what we're going to do on today's show is we're going to look at a squad in detail, and then we're going to identify training programs that they need. Finally, we're going to just focus on these two, and then we're going to look at how we can play them. What are the options going forward to play the side. You're going to have to think about option A and option B. What am I going to do against tough sides? What am I going to do against weaker sides? So that you know where you stand. If you follow any of my saves, especially my custodian save, there are games when I do things differently. If I expect to win the save, then I might pass into space and roam from position. And if there are games where I expect a harder challenge, I might hold some of my duties back. I might even go structured. In some saves, I want to throw more bodies into attack, then I'll go into fluid. And then I'll look at my roles and duties. So there's a lot of things at play here. But what I want to do is I want to simplify them in the next 30 minutes or so. I don't like changing too many things about people's tactics unless there's something really wrong. And sometimes when the tactic works, it works. And, you know, the idea here is to see what kind of options you have in your club. Now, you are a team that's punching above your weight. So definitely I will go with a DM in any system which is punching above his weight. I will always have a DM in the system. I will also play with 3 central midfielders or 1 DM and 2 central midfielders, but at least it gives me the option to go for 3. This allows me to, you know, at times push more players into midfield and control midfields much more effectively, because if you can control midfield, chances are you'll be able to win the game or at least not lose the game. So midfield dominance depends on the number of midfielders you can put there, and this means during transitions how many of these players can come into midfield. So you know, if you look at this tactic, you'll have like 5, maybe 7 so you can control midfield quite easily. All right, so what else do we do? So I like to look at squad depth here, currently select the roles of tactics. Then you click on this icon. Then it brings up, you can either go and scout for a halfback if you don't have one. Or let's look at the attributes. Now, here, the first time when you go into the screen, you're just going to know how your players compare to each other. What's more important is how your players compare to the rest of the league, and you find that out from comparison. Now, we want to have a halfback. Our halfback is very important. Our halfback's positioning has got to be important, but he's got to compare against something. Now, we don't compare positioning to positioning. We compare the halfback's positioning or any defender's positioning to the midfield and strikers off the ball, because off the ball is their capacity to find space. Positioning is the capacity of a defensive player to able to control that space. So here we got midfielders and strikers. They're off the ball, will be under mentals, and you will find the off the ball to be about 9.11. So your positioning has to be greater than 9.11. Then we're looking at composure, because halfbacks, they drop between central defenders and help with ball circulation. So number to look at is 8.37. Okay, not too bad, but this is not really, you don't really compare this number to midfielders and strikers, but only for off the ball, right? Then finally, we look at first touch. The first touch that our players need, and this will be under technical. The first touch is also about, we say about 10 here. So the first touch is 10. Off the ball is about 9, close to 10. All right, so this is the number our halfback needs. So if we go to our squad depth again and we look at the available players who can play in this position, we've got 2 players here, Harry Lovett. So the number he has to beat is 10. So we're looking at positioning, we're looking at first touch, preferably tackling as well, right? So we've got positioning of 9. That's not too bad. That meets the requirements. Anything higher would have been good. His mentals are okay. His first touch is 10. His tackling is 13. He's not critical that he has good off the ball. And then our second player is Daniel Williams. Positioning is 9. Off the ball is 4. This is good because I'd rather put Daniel Williams here. But the problem with Daniel Williams is his low composure. So under pressure, if you're playing against a team that's going to push up against you and play with a high press, he's going to have a problem because he won't be able to handle the pressure. He might give the ball away. So Daniel Williams, we want to go to his training and develop. So this is where I decide what they need in terms of training. So here, while his position is 9, actually what his biggest problem is going to be composure and first touch. So what I want to do is I want to work on his composure over time, because his composure is a bigger problem. So here, you've got him trained as a complete wingback. I can see why. He's okay. I get what you're trying to do here. You found yourself a player with a great deal of acceleration, and you want to convert him into a wingback. Brilliant. I like this. But again, I'll focus on his composure, because I want to work on bring his composure up a bit more, so that when you're playing any kind of a system that has got a high press, he doesn't lose his cool. Because you want to develop them, you want to hit the attributes together. Here you want to get, if you want him to work as a complete wing back, eventually his crossing and dribbling has to be good. So don't worry about if he's going to be a complete wing back. The other problem is this with training. There are too many attributes, especially if you are working in a lower league side. Here I'll change this immediately to a wing back. And yeah, if you want to train Daniel Williams as a wing back, I would definitely train him as a wing back. And I would train him like this. Then we keep his, you keep the attributes, right? You focus on few attributes. So this is another thing that you need to do. Don't hit all the attributes. It doesn't mean that all of them are going to go up, because current ability points, there are a finite amount that are redistributed. So if you have too many attributes, you actually improve a little bit in a lot of attributes, but you don't really get strong in any of them. So if you narrow the focus down, you become better in less. So that's going to be much more significant. So this is one way we go through our team. So we'll come back to our squad report. So we only know that we have one player here, Harry Levat. But I noticed that you have quite a few central defenders. So we can come here, and then when we're looking at your central defenders, you've got a big bunch of central defenders. Good. So now what we're going to do in this bunch is identify any of these players who can become halfbacks as well. So essentially what we want from a halfback is decent positioning of 9. Now, we don't want to use our best central defenders, but we want to have the option of playing some of these players. Like he might be able to play as a halfback because his positioning is half decent and the other attributes are okay. Here his determination is a bit low. His positioning might be good, but his work rate is very low, so you don't want that for a halfback. So we've got quite a few players here who can be reconverted as halfbacks. We've got about 2 or 3 players here who can easily be reconverted as halfbacks, because a halfback is just a central defender who has the composure to play the ball out of defense. That's basically it. Okay, so now it's time to take a look at a tactic. Now you've given me a 4-3-3. In fact, you've given me 3 tactics, but let's play with one and see how we do. I don't really believe that we need to change tactics too much. You can create minor tweaks in tactics. In fact, if you see any of my shows, you notice one thing. I do a lot of small little tweaks in my tactics because I react to things in the game. So here we have a tactic that's looking at creating attacking opportunities by using a DLP on support here. So he's most likely going to look for players here. We've got Mazzala here on support, wing back, but honestly, we're not really exploiting this player very much. And we've got 2 orthodox central defenders here with a fullback. So these guys are just going to come in here into this positions to support play. So a lot of your creation of goals is going to depend on these 2. Now, I've created a second option. So in this second option, it's slightly different because I notice you've got a player who's got fantastic acceleration, who can explode down the flanks. We're going to use him to full effect to go down the flanks. We've got an attacking playmaker who might sit narrower because he's playing beside a ball-winning midfielder. So there's this group of players is going to do a lot to try and keep the ball. But, you know, we've got boys here who can explode into space. And when he does, that's when this deep line forward becomes a bit more dangerous. Deep line forward will drop deep and help to recycle possession with these players. We've got Mazzala on support, which this role can easily be changed to a deep line playmaker on support, which can also work. Then he'll be looking for the winger on attack down the flank, and we've got a fullback on support here. We've got 2 central, very basic central defenders here. If I wanted to hurl balls from the back, then I'll probably turn this into a defensive centre back. In our third version of the tactic, slightly more defensively minded. Here we're looking at hitting teams on the break. So once again, I've not looked at the mentality, I've not looked at the shape just yet, but this will define my transitions because we've got wing backs on defense. They come into this position to support these 2 players. We've got a DLP on support. I'll probably give him play instructions to play risky passes. I'll keep the ball simple, but here we've got a defensive centre back hurling passes down the line. We've got AF and a winger on attack. So whenever a team decides to attack me a lot, then these 2 players become very important because we can attack them into this. We can hit them in the spaces. Doesn't really matter what I do, but we could play this on standard. We could play this on fluid as well. We could play this on standard. If I wanted more players to be involved in transitions, which will involve these 3 players, so I can play on fluid. Otherwise, I can play on structure, and then I really depend on these 2 players to do things with the ball. In terms of team instructions, we could play this on slightly high, you can play this on normal, whatever it is. I'll use the offside trap. Prevent short goalkeeper distributions almost goes without saying that I'll use this. Then pass into space. If I have space, I'll use this. Otherwise, these are the shots that we begin with. If I want to use the right flank, I can exploit the right flank, or I can also go fairly wide, remove this shot, or use this shot. This is This will be depend on the situation. If I really need to, I might exploit the flank, but more likely than not, if I'm playing against a team that's attacking me and giving me space, this becomes an important shot because you'll pass into space. Now if I push it up the fluid, really what I'll do is I'll drop my defensive line but keep the same thing going. I may not use pass into space anymore, but I'll be very, very careful about how we use the ball. I'll be looking to see whether we can keep the ball in this side of the pitch before I go into fluid. Now in terms of transitions, this tactic has got quite a few transitions, in quite a lot actually, because this guy drops deep again, this guy will overlap, this guy will attack down the space. So we've got two kinds of attacks here. We can include a third kind of attack here. We had a defensive center back at the back to hold the ball over the top. So then we get three attacking patterns. Here, what we want to do is we can play this on control, we can play this on structure, which only involves a few players in transition, most likely 1, 2, and 3. And what we will do here in this system is slightly higher, use offside trap, prevent short goalkeeper distribution, play out the defense, point to box. This is how I start. And if I want to emphasize us going on the flanks even more, we'll go fairly wide. If I don't want to and I want to hold possession of the ball, I'll go narrow. But then what will happen with this guy is we'll tend to sit narrower through the transitions, and I'll tell him to sit narrower here as well so that we can keep the ball a bit more effectively. And if I'm really worried about losing the ball, this is what I'll do. So these players end up with very specific instructions on how we use the ball. Now, one other thing to note is this guy in this situation where we're playing on a higher mentality, I do not want him to commit early because we've got a ball-winning midfielder in front, so I'll tell him to do this. Now in this tactic we'll also play with a high block, and here the high block will involve me doing this, asking the advanced playmaker to do a lot of work here as well. I'll tell him to mark. Why am I asking him to mark tighter? Because they will have opposition players with the ball, and I want them to get on their asses very quickly. So these are the instructions. Here I'm playing with a high block with these three players. The question is whether I want these two players to do the high block. Now, the ball-winning midfielder will naturally do a high block because his closing down is much more. This Mazzala, we can ask him to close down more and tackle harder and mark tighter so that he puts a lot of pressure on the flanks in the absence of the winger doing the job, because the winger is not really going to be there. So this is how it's set up with the high block. With this version of the tactic, is more like soaking pressure and hitting them back. So here the pass into space becomes important. Here this player's passing instructions are also very important. So what we want to do is more direct passes, more risky. So he's going to be launching balls into space. This guy here, these three are in a natural position to put pressure. We just want to leave them alone. We can play this on structure when we start games, and these guys are all told to sit narrow. Why am I telling them to sit narrow? I want them to support midfield so that we don't lose the ball. And in terms of closing down and instructions, do I want to play with a low block? Not really, because then we finally come to the last decision. What kind of a block do we want to play with this counter-attacking system? This is going to be totally dependent on this information. Our strikers are physicals. Now, strikers and midfielders, the strikers in the land, they've got jumping reach of about 11, right? With the midfielders not that high. Jumping reach is only about 9, but the strikers have a jumping reach of 11. For set pieces, that I worry about defenders. Defenders have a jumping reach of almost 12, 11. If it's 11.09, I would usually round it up to 12. Why? Because that includes substitutes. So now we're looking at your players, like your defenders, right? So we go to your defenders, and this is the final piece in the puzzle. Okay, jumping reach for your defenders, 14, 14, 14. That's not too bad actually. Your central defenders have got very good jumping reach. So what does this mean? This means that I can probably play with a low block. So this tactic is the last piece in the puzzle. This is where your Question is whether you have the nerves to play the low block. This is going to be mental because not many people can do this. All right, this is the low block. So I'll set it up for a low block. So he closes down more. And these guys all will tackle hard at the back. And these guys will not do any closing down. So this is the final piece in the puzzle. Final piece in the puzzle is to make sure we draw teams in and we hit them. But here with the low block, why have I got the use offside trap on? Because we want to squeeze the playable space. We don't want the team to be dropping deep too much. So when we have a chance to play the offside trap, we will. If you're dropping deep, the defensive line tells our players how willing I am for them to go up the pitch with the ball. But the offside trap basically just we will squeeze. We will make ourselves shallower for teams to play against. So this is the offside trap, pass into space, no prevention or goalkeeper distribution. We might use tighter marking, and this is it. Be more disciplined, stick to positions, low block, and that's it. This will be the low block, and we might even try this in our first game of the season. So against Sefan Druids, we played a counter-attacking system, played deep. We gave Sefan a lot of chances to use the ball. Unfortunately for them, they didn't use the ball too well, and we managed to beat them easily 2-0 in this game. Very little work. Ethan Jones, Colesgrove, this was one of a set piece. We had lots of movement in and around the box, but 2 goals from set pieces in this game. But we also managed to see highlights of this guy exploding into space alongside this guy, and this was what we wanted to get from the system. Our next game was a bit more interesting because we played it on standard structured against Cardiff Met University. The whole goal here was to be we wanted to try being defensive, sitting back and hitting them on the break. So we used this system. Essentially, the team instructions are really simple: slightly deeper, fairly wide, mix, be more disciplined, stick to positions, pass into space. Yeah, I could actually do this, right, and add a bit more to it, but we didn't do that. We stuck to this. We played. All right, so the game started off pretty good. We scored. We took a 2-0 lead early. Harry Levette giving us the lead in the 10th minute, and then this was not too bad. I mean, off the throw, Boyce played it to Holsgrove, then Williams to Levette firing it from there. It was a great start to the match. And then in the 31st minute, we scored our second goal from a corner. Fletcher doesn't clear this. As you can see, I keep 3 back now in your system. Williams to Levette. They slice it in for Ethan Jones. We score a second goal, 2-0. Now, what surprised me was they managed to come back. They scored their first goal off a set piece. It was 2-1 at this point. And then off a goal kick from us, Hill. Jones, this is the new signing that you have. Played it to Ethan Jones. Ethan Jones played it back to Jones. I think there was a ball from the defense over the top. Sutton over the top. Wasn't dealt with very well. Back to Jones again. Then down to Fletcher. Here, they clear the ball defensively very quickly. They move the ball. Their second goal was pretty quick. Over the top, bang, and they scored a goal. I wasn't too thrilled. What did we do? So 2-2 down. I have another version, right? So this tactic, and I swapped over to this one. This wasn't a low block. This is a high block, where I got a wing back overlapping, a winger attacking this, where I got defensive centre back launching balls this way. The only difference is how I use these 2 players. Here we have a ball winning midfielder. So I swapped Fletcher over to that side because his off the ball is pretty low. So he played as the ball winning midfielder. And we managed to score 2 more goals. The next goal came from Levette. 68th minute, we managed to pull ahead 3-2 up now against Cardiff. Our next goal was scored in the 94th minute, deep in stoppage. Moves really starting from deep within our own half, quick counter attack. But here I'm playing on standard fluid, so you can see we got quite a number of players in the box because I wanted to get more players involved in the transition. So I actually went on fluid, so that it's like a 50-50 transition. More players coming back for defense, more players going back for attack. The only difference I made here was I played with a normal defensive line. And we managed to win that game 4-2. So the system is simple. We've got this is a we can play a deep block with this system. With this system, we can go camping, or we can throw more players into transitional attacks. I can play standard fluid, I can play control structure, I can play standard structure. Really, I've got lots of options here. I went on control structure, then I went standard fluid, then I went standard structure, then I went standard fluid. It's all about controlling the number of players I want involved in transitions. So if I wanted more players involved in transitions, I went to fluid. I wanted less players involved in transitions, I go to structure. If I want a lot of players involved in that transition to attack, then I'd be very careful with my defensive line as well. So it was not too many things, right? So it's really simple. So the rule of thumb is very simple, right? Mentality affects your transitions and the speed of your transitions, because that affects your risk appetite. Who gets involved in the transitions is your player roles and duties. Shape will tell you how many players or who is going to be more involved than the rest. So so if you're playing on a fluid shape and you're playing standard, that means you're taking 50-50 position both ways, right? If you're playing control fluid, then more of your players are going to be involved in thinking about moving forward. So I didn't want that, so I went to standard fluid. I wanted fewer players involved in attacks, so I went standard structured. So it's not rocket science here. It's pretty simple. So okay, not too bad. 4-2. 4-2 win over Cardiff and Seven Druids. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of Game Changer. If you have any questions, please look me on Twitter at Bustthenet or addicted2fm.com, my website. I truly want to thank all my patrons for their continued support of this channel. This show wouldn't have been possible without the patrons, because this actually comes from one of the patrons. He asked me to have a look at this save prior to our coaching session, and honestly, I don't see you having any issues with your team. Because I think the more pertinent question was, have I made the right kind of calls for my players and the positions they played? If by just looking at this save, mostly, yeah, you've done the right call. You've got the right players in. You should be storming to the top of this league with this team that you have. Okay, you guys take care. Have a good one. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.